So I'll start my presentation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sri Harsha, for giving me this opportunity to present. We are in episode 11 currently, and I'm really thankful to Sahastra Indy Foundation for giving me this opportunity. So today our theme of cases is motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome. And coming first to disclosure, I have nothing to disclose. I have taken informed consent from the patients, and I'm sharing my personal experience. Some of the treatment modalities or some of the things which I'm going to mention, there is a paucity of literature, and I have no data to back up some of my like findings as well as the management what I have done. So, but we will discuss that now. So today's learning objective is I'm going to just give you a broad overview about like motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, and I will dive into interesting cases. Now coming to driving and brain, like if we consider driving as a task and we look at the neurological disorders which affect driving, but before that, how like various what are the various structures which are involved in driving. So before that, we know that equilibrium is the ability of an individual to maintain posture as well as spatial orientation at rest as well as during movement. And for the balance, we know that like we need vision, vestibular system, and proprioceptive inputs. So so in case of driving, the parts of neuraxis, the neurological axis which is involved in driving is, it encompasses most of the parts of neuraxis, that is higher cognitive functions like visuospatial orientation is needed, memory function is required. Then the cranial nerves like the third nerve, sixth nerve, fourth nerve, and for the extraocular eye movement as well as the vision is the most important thing which is needed, because visual cues are very important while driving. And so also the vestibular nerve is important, like vestibular nerve is very important, that is utricular function is needed, like to assess the linear acceleration, tilt of the vehicle, bends and turns. So overall, these are the cranial nerves which are needed. Even the auditory function is important, for example, to hear what is happening in the surrounding. And then the next is the motor system. Like motor system is needed for executing the driving, like the motor function of the upper limbs and lower limbs for applying for upper limbs for the steering and the lower limbs for the brake acceleration. The sensory system is also very important, that is proprioception, and how much pressure is exerted on the brake is that input is given by the proprioceptors in the lower limb. And I will tell you one example, some one case where the patient had impaired proprioception, and how he faced difficulty while driving. And the most important thing is coordination between all these systems, which is done by the cerebellum and the vestibulocerebellar pathways. Now, coming to the driving and neurological disorders, which I have come across in my practice, I will just mention. Like, for example, one patient, he went on a long drive, and he kept his hand, because here in Dubai the driving is left-handed driving, left-sided. So like he kept his left hand on the armrest, and he kept it for 2 3 hours, and he it led to the compression of the ulnar nerve, and he had ulnar neuropathy. Then one patient, while driving, she suddenly developed this hyperkalemic periodic paralysis. Suddenly she stopped in the middle of the highway, and she was not able to move any of her limbs, but she was fully conscious. and she was later diagnosed to have hyperkalemic periodic paralysis. And we commonly come across with patients who have epilepsy and develop seizures while driving, and that's why we restrict, tell them not to drive for 6 months till they are seizure free for 6 months. These driving regulations differ from country to country in case of epilepsy. And then comes the dizziness while driving. I'm going to list the differential diagnosis. Then the sensory neuropathy, one of the patient was not able to sense the how much pressure he's applying over the brakes, and he was suddenly braking when it was not needed. He was supposed to reduce put the little pressure on the brakes, but he was braking suddenly. He was a school bus driver, and so he faced very much difficulty, and he had a diabetic neuropathy leading to the proprioceptive loss because of large fiber neuropathy. Another patient had motor neuropathy, that is foot drop, which made his driving difficult. And then one patient, one patient I came across who, because of the direct blow of the cold AC, he got Bell's palsy. We commonly hear this history from patients with Bell's palsy that direct blow of cold air can lead to the facial weakness. And migraine, driving or travel is one of the known trigger for migraine. There are various things which happen while driving, like during the travel. I will mention in the next slide. And neck pain and back pain is also very common, commonly seen in people who drive for longer duration. Now, these are the things. Like these are the things which trigger migraine attack in patients who drive or as a passenger also. Like for example, uncomfortable travel conditions, sunlight exposure, change in daily routine, and dehydration can lead to this migraine attack. And symptoms can develop as a passenger or as a driver, like for example, vestibular symptoms in a patient with while he's in motion can develop as a passenger or as a driver. So there are different disorders which manifest as passenger, and there are different disorders which manifest as a driver. Then one common disorder which we know of is motion sickness, which is seen as a passenger. Like when we travel, many patients have this history of motion sickness, especially who suffer from vestibular migraine. They get dizziness, vertigo during the travel, and yes. Apart from dizziness, vertigo, and nausea and vomiting, which we commonly know of, these are the symptoms of motion sickness. But there are other symptoms of motion sickness like headache, drowsiness. Many people may not get actual dizziness, but they feel very much drowsy after the travel. They feel fatigue. They they can have yawning. They develop malaise, and so these are the other symptoms of motion sickness. These are also categorized as symptoms of motion sickness. Now coming to differential diagnosis of dizziness, variety of disorders can the patients with suffering from variety of vestibular disorders can face difficulty in a vehicle, like after travel. And these disorders are like bilateral vestibulopathy, motion sickness, drug-induced dizziness, BPPV, post-BPPV dizziness. I have seen a few patients where the patients develop an attack of Meniere's disease while they were driving, because travel is one of the known trigger for the attack of Meniere's disease. There is a specific entity which is called as motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, which is which manifest in drivers, specifically in drivers. The other vestibular disorders I have mentioned, uh, uh, they can cause symptoms as a driver or as a passenger, mainly passenger, like motion sickness is manifested mainly as a passenger in the back seat as compared to the front seat, or as compared to driving. So let us discuss this disorder, that is motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome. So coming to the introduction of this disorder, we know that the spatial cognitive ability is the most important, function which is needed while driving a motor vehicle. And that's why in variety of vestibular disorders, we get this driving difficulty. Patients suffer from difficulty in driving in genuine organic or structural vestibular disorders. So vestibular system plays important role in spatial navigation and orientation. And while driving, there is a differential movement of the visual field. The objects which are there in the visual field on the right half of the visual field and left half of the visual field are moving differentially. And it is a visuospatial cognitive task. There is paucity of nearby visual cues, and there is a lot of visual dependency to decide the distance. The distance has to be judged based on the vision. Visual cues are very important, and one of the very common cause of dizziness while driving is asymmetric optic flow. For example, just imagine everybody might have suffered from this illusion, vestibular illusion. For example, if you are sitting in a train and one side train is moving and other side is train is not moving, you feel like if that other side one sided train is moving forwards, automatically you feel like your train is moving backwards. So that is because of asymmetry of the optic flow. On one side the visual field is giving information that it is static environment, and the other side is giving information that it is in motion. So that difference of optic flow, the asymmetry in the optic flow causes this phenomenon. So this is what happens. Like for example, this is the right half of suppose of the visual field, and which goes to the left occipital cortex, and the information from the left half of the visual field goes to the right visual cortex. So normally, suppose the visual stimuli in the right half and the left half are symmetric, especially during motion, then there is no confusion between both the inputs coming to the occipital cortex. So the inputs which are coming are called as optic flow. The optic flow of the right-sided nerve and the optic flow of the left-sided nerve. If it is equal, then there is no confusion. But if it is unequal in a normal brain, still it can tolerate to a large extent, it can tolerate. But if there is any functional disorder, or if there is organic or structural disorder, then the person can feel very much dizzy during in this kind of environment. So there was one article which was published, like motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome. First time this entity was it was published in 1985 by Professor Page, and they described around 6 cases who developed dizziness or disorientation during while driving, and they described 6 patients, and the cause they found was most probably it is either a vestibular disease, or the functional disorders were not very well very well established at that point of time. And some of the patients were not having vestibular disorders, where this particular it was proposed that they might be suffering from functional vestibular disorder. So now coming in their case report, like this article, they described 6 cases, and in which the patients felt car was pulled towards either of right or left side, and the most of the patients developed disorientation, and it was associated with a lot of panic reaction, like anxiety, because you are in motion, and during the movement, if you develop this dizziness, it creates a lot of anxiety, fear, palpitation, sweating. It can even trigger neurocardiogenic syncope. And there are a lot of predisposing factors which can lead to, I will explain in the next slide. And the duration of illness was huge. Like it is something similar to triple PD, where the patients are diagnosed relatively late. Like in the average time to diagnose patients with triple PD is around 4.5 years, according to one study. Similarly, the average time to diagnose this condition is also very high. The more and more awareness about this disorder can help to diagnose these patients early. And I will show you some of my cases where the patients presented within 1 week of onset of symptoms, where I could diagnose them suffering from motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome. Now coming to this the various findings, just I will mention because there is a lot of similarity between the findings which I'm going to present and what they have presented. And despite the lack of the sophisticated gadgets which we have today, despite of those limitations, our forefathers, they described this entity along with impairment of the pursuit nystagmus and the optokinetic nystagmus, because mainly it is this particular phenomenon is related to the asymmetric optic flow, asymmetric vision, like visual pathway. The visual pathway doesn't function properly during that high speed, and the coordination between, there is mismatch between vestibular system and the visual system, which leads to disorientation while driving. So the pursuit nystagmus was impaired in few patients, and the optokinetic nystagmus was stronger on one side as compared to the other side. That were their findings. And the situations where these patients had dizziness was higher speed, that is more than 80, bends and turns, multi-lanes, slopes while overtaking a big vehicle, and looking at other vehicles while at signals are in motion. So these were the common triggers. So here in Dubai, the roads, there are a lot of like bridges and the multi-lane highways are there. So I'm going to describe what the patients in my series they presented with. So they mainly they can get problems with the multi-lane highways. They can develop problems in the while the turning, like in the turns and bends, they can develop issues. And if they look from the bridge down, they can, while driving, if they look down, they can develop a lot of dizziness. So these are the circumstances where they can feel dizzy. And then I will show you one video where like for example, this is the video taken by my wife when I was driving the car, and I'm going in one lane, and if I'm going at a speed of, suppose I was going at 120 kilometers per hour, and uh, it's very important to like you can see the asymmetry in the optic flow, right-sided visual system and the left-sided visual field. There is difference in the optic flow, especially when some vehicle passes in the corresponding lane. So whenever some vehicle passes from the corresponding lane, there can be a sudden difference of the optic flow, and that can trigger dizziness. For example, I'll show you. Now, suppose this big vehicle is passing from my right side. That can cause dizziness in some patients, can feel very much dizzy because of the vehicle on one side, and the other side is empty. So that different asymmetry in the optic flow can lead to it. Then single lane versus these patients usually don't get any problem. This is Dubai frame, golden frame of Dubai. And usually these people don't get problem when they are traveling in a single lane as compared to multi-lane. In multi-lane, they get very much disoriented, and the symptoms are more in the multi-lane. Then the symptoms are more in the bends as compared to the straight road. Like if, whenever they are bending to one particular side, right side or left side, they feel the symptoms are more. Okay. And then these are the various situations where they take. And like I told, overtaking vehicle, for example, looking at other vehicles while driving, as well as I have mentioned, the overtaking is a problem for these patients, especially on one particular side. Now coming to the cases, with that introduction of this disorder, I will begin the cases. Like for example, the case number 1. Now, 42 years gentleman, he came with history of disorientation while driving, and he felt that the car was going to one side. And the duration of history was 2 years, and the triggers were high velocity, that is more than 80 kilometers per hour speed, multi-lane highways, and overtaking. While overtaking, he had this particular symptom. Now, apart from this, the other history was the other toppings which he tried to, which helps to us to get the clues, like history of migraine from 32 years, history of motion sickness, and there was no history of agoraphobia, no symptoms while going in open places or crowded places. But the history of diurnal variations was present. Like morning he used to feel better, but the symptoms were worse in the evening. It is one of the symptoms which is typically seen in patients with functional dizziness, that is persistent postural perceptual dizziness. Typically, the patients are better when they wake up, and as the day progresses, the patients feel worse. So, this is an indication that this particular disorder, this motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, is a disorder. It is a functional disorder, and so coming to just a minute, I'll just check whether the power is connected, power cable. Yeah. So coming to the next clues in the history, then I did the VNG, video nystagmography, for this patient, and I was surprised after reading this article. This particular till reading this article, I was not aware of this finding, and I went back to all my VNG data of all the patients of motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, and I found that the leftward gain it was is more as compared to the rightward gain of the smooth pursuit. And the rightward smooth pursuit, the rightward means from the left to right. When the horizontal stimulus is moving from left to right, it was saccadic as compared to the right to left movement, that is leftward movement. And on head shaking, the patient had right beating nystagmus. So these are the signatures of the residual disease which they have, like the residual structural disorder or a cellular disorder which they are suffering from. But on the top of that, they develop this disorientation because of functional impairment while driving, which is something similar to what happens in patients with triple PD. So, coming to the treatment of this patient, I started this patient on amitriptyline, like 12.5 milligram. There was only 40% improvement in this patient. Then I added this bisoprolol and magnesium, because why I added these drugs was because the patient had additional migraine history. That was the reason why I added beta blocker and magnesium. But I was surprised to see that the patient's symptoms like of motorist vestibular disorientation reduced drastically after starting these medications. So that's what helped me to treat the rest of the patients. As I kept on treating the patients with different drugs, I came to know that I came to come across with the response I measured in terms of the dizziness handicap inventory. And then I will mention which are the drugs which I have used. As we see different cases, I saw different drugs working in different patients. Now coming to the DHI of this patient, dizziness handicap inventory, when I started the like bisoprolol and magnesium, the DHI score went down from 24 to 8. And then I diagnosed this patient as motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, and he had comorbid migraine. That one finding which I got in all of these patients is most of these patients, out of case series of my 16 patients, 12 patients had history of this comorbid migraine. So I will present at the end. Now coming to the next case, some of the cases I have skipped because they are those cases who have some unique finding, or there is some take home message. I have showed those cases out of these 16 cases case series which I have. So coming to this case number 4, He's a driver from 25 years. And a very important finding I would like to mention here is this thing, like many of these patients are actually they are drivers and professional drivers who are driving from 10 years, 5 years, more than 20 years, and they can develop this syndrome. So this particular syndrome is not related to the disorientation in which we face initially in the initial days after learning the driving. So it is something which is different from the initial days, and it can happen with people who are professional drivers. And the duration of the history was 1 month. The patient had imbalance. It was the triggers were fast moving objects and overtaking. And again, this patient also had history of migraine, and he consulted at several places. Following diagnosis were considered like cardiogenic syncope, autonomic dysfunction, because what happens in these cases is they develop this disorientation. In fast velocity, they develop this disorientation. And in that velocity, if somebody develops disorientation, it is very natural to have palpitation and activation of sympathetic nervous system, and it can lead to sweating, and it can lead to even blackouts and neurocardiogenic pre-syncopal symptoms it can lead to. And those symptoms, when they are told to a physician, it is very common to think first about the causes like cardiogenic syncope, autonomic dysfunction. Now, coming to the VNG findings of this patient, again, this patient had asymmetry in the optokinetic testing, that is this like the leftward gain was more than the rightward gains. That means the left beating nystagmus during the optokinetic testing was stronger than the right beating nystagmus, and there was absent response to the upward stimulus, upward moving from bottom to top when the I gave the stimulus, that is the optokinetic strip moving from bottom to top. Then the patient didn't have any nystagmus, it was absent. So, and the spontaneous nystagmus was downbeating, which is a very without fixation. This was without fixation. And so this is very common finding, which I see in patients with vestibular migraine, where they can get a lot of varieties of nystagmus, and something similar findings I was getting in these patients. These patients might have these patients with motorist vestibular disorientation, as I have already told, they might have some of the VNG findings which are signature of underlying vestibular disease, but they can also have the typical findings which are seen in smooth pursuit and the optokinetic testing. So this particular patient, I started on amitriptyline. The patient did not respond. Then I started the patient on gabapentin. The patient didn't respond. Then I started this patient on carbamazepine, and patient had a very good response and started feeling 80% better. And that made me to think whether this patient has any additional comorbidity which is responding to the carbamazepine, and which I'm going to present subsequently what happened in the next cases. For this case, I was not sure why the carbamazepine helped this particular patient. And in this patient, I came to the conclusion that it is a case of motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, and he has history of migraine, so it was comorbid migraine. Now, coming to another case where the patient was feeling that the car might roll over, 3 years history of symptoms, associated anxiety, palpitation while when he used to develop these symptoms. And especially it used to happen while looking at fast moving car, high speed, multi lanes. And he was having typical symptoms which we commonly see in patients with vestibular migraine, that is bilateral episodic tinnitus, episodic vertigo. And the VNG findings were completely normal. Like the all the there was no nystagmus, no preponderance of gain on one side during the optokinetic testing or smooth pursuit testing. And initially, I started this patient on amitriptyline 12.5 milligram. His this dizziness handicap inventory was 60, and there was no difference after the in the follow-up of 1 month. Amitriptyline, there was no response to amitriptyline. That's why again, because I treated another patient with bisoprolol and magnesium, I added that. I added beta blocker and magnesium, and the DHI went down to 36, but still the patient was feeling only 30 to 40% subjective improvement. Then I stopped the amitriptyline and replaced it with desvenlafaxine, which is commonly used drug, SNRI, which is used in patients with triple PD, that is persistent postural perceptual dizziness. And the DHI went down to 2. I was really surprised the way the patient responded. And the patient felt 80% improvement after starting this desvenlafaxine. And that, so I, day by day, like in last 3 years, the experience with these cases has helped me to add more drugs in the armory, like which other drugs can be used in these particular patients to help these patients, because this particular patient, if it happens in this particular disorder, if it happens in person who is a professional driver, he can lose job, because if they develop dizziness while driving, it becomes very difficult to, and it specifically happens only while driving, otherwise they are fine. So in this particular patient, I diagnosed the patient as motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome. There was no comorbid illness. Now coming to the case number 7, again the similar history, 8-month history, similar type of symptoms, similar triggers, and that this particular patient I started on topiramate because there was associated history of migraine. And unfortunately, I don't have follow-up of this patient. I'll try to contact the patient and I'll see, because I saw this patient 2 years ago. But I included this case is because of the findings which I got in VNG. That is, rightward gain was more than the leftward gain in horizontal smooth pursuit, and in this the spontaneous nystagmus was left beating with a beating component. That is typically we see in case of like suppose a patient develops without fixation a nystagmus which is horizontal towards one side with little upbeating component, which we commonly see in patients with old cases of vestibular superior vestibular neuritis on the other side. For example, suppose this patient had right-sided superior vestibular neuritis in the past, he can develop these findings later on also. It can remain there in the VNG. And one unusual thing which I noticed in this particular patient was patient had this biphasic type of nystagmus in his VNG. For example, the patient had left beating component in both head shaking and hyperventilation, but the downbeating component appeared for a while. There was a pause, and the downbeating component was followed by a beating component. That was something which was very like something surprising finding to me. And I have seen biphasic nystagmus in head shaking test, but this is something which I saw on hyperventilation test. So I diagnosed this case as motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, and could be probably it could be due to old right vestibular, right superior vestibular neuritis. There was history of migraine, and he had history of ear trauma in the past, but that may not be contributory to his illness. But you, as like I have mentioned, like in case of triple PD, there is some comorbid vestibular disorder always, most of the times, like 60 to 80% of the times, we can find a comorbid disorder in patients with triple PD. So this motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome is again another functional disorder, something which is clubbed under the umbrella of triple PD, and it is a functional vestibular disorder, and this also behaves in a similar manner like triple PD. It can also have a lot of comorbid, either vestibular disorder or a neurologic disorder or a non-neurologic disorder. I have some cases where a non-neurological systemic disorder triggered this condition. So again, I'm telling about this particular thing, that is in case of triple PD, we commonly see that these patients with triple PD have some kind of triggers. The most common trigger is peripheral and central vestibular disorder. The second most common trigger is vestibular migraine. Then the other triggers are anxiety, panic attacks, head injuries, autonomic disorders, and other disorders also can trigger triple PD. So these are the things which similar things can happen in patients with motoris vestibular disorientation syndrome. Now this particular patient, 32 years gentleman, he's a tour guide, and his totally his profession, his daily like income is dependent on his like profession, and he is a driver, professional driver from 8 years. He came with very acute history, like 8 days history of this disorientation while driving, and it was more on high speed, that is more than 80 kilometers per hour. And he was feeling that the car was veering to the left side. The car was suddenly going to the left side, and he used to do postural adjustments and tightness of his body, and he was trying to keep the car in the same lane, but actually he was feeling the car might hit to the other cars which are traveling from the left sided lane. And uh, in the VNG, he had again the same finding, the smooth pursuit abnormality. And the common finding which I see in patients with triple PD is dizziness during hyperventilation test without any specific nystagmus. Similar finding I saw in this particular patient also. And this particular patient, I started pregabalin 75 milligram with magnesium. Initially, in the 5 days follow-up, there was 50% improvement. And in 1 month follow-up, I saw this patient 1.5 months ago, and 80 to 90% improvement I saw in this particular patient. So I came to know that even the pregabalin also can work in this group of patients, because I used gabapentin earlier in some patients and it worked. So I tried pregabalin, and it also helps in this group of patients. Especially this pregabalin and gabapentin have a lot of anxiolytic action also, and that also helps in this group of patients. So again, I reached the diagnosis of motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, and now why I'm showing this particular case is the rest of the history is similar, but as I was telling earlier, that even the non-neurologic or non-vestibular disorders can also trigger the symptoms of this condition. So in this particular patient, I found that the symptoms worsened after cholecystectomy, which is also commonly seen in patients with triple PD. Even patients with triple PD, if they undergo any surgery or any other non-neurologic disorder, they can develop worsening of symptoms. And this finding was something similar to triple PD. The diurnal fluctuations and agoraphobia, and the symptoms were more in the evening. And again, I started the patient on amitriptyline and optokinetic test and the hyperventilation test. It is very common finding in this triple PD as well as this MVDS to have dizziness without any specific nystagmus. Even in vestibular migraine, it's a very common finding to have dizziness while doing optokinetic testing. So the patient was started on amitriptyline, and the diagnosis is motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome. So again, another case where a professional driver from 22 years, and he was driving at very high speed where he developed the first attack, and he had palpitations, sweating, and he was feeling that car might go to the left side, and he was feeling that he was tilting towards the left side along with the car, and the triggers were the same. But why I presented this case is again the finding which were seen on the smooth pursuit, and there were additional findings on head shaking test and hyperventilation test. And in this particular patient, I was surprised to see there were so many things which were happening. And when I did a brain scan for this particular patient, there were four findings which were seen in his MRI. And I was really surprised to see which one of these is triggering his problem. For example, this particular patient had okay, so that this particular patient had a MRI which showed the anterior inferior cerebral artery loop, So you can see the anterior inferior cerebellar artery, which is looping around the vestibular nerve on the both the sides. This is also the artery which is looping around the this vestibular nerve. So there is indentation also. So on the both sides, the ICA loop was seen, and this is the first time where I came across a case of motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, where probably it could be because of vascular loop, and that made me to start carbamazepine or gabapentin, and that helped the patient. So this is how gabapentin can help. Gabapentin, why in earlier case I used carbamazepine, and that time I was not sure why carbamazepine helped. But there are cases where out of my series, in my series, like 16 patients, 3 patients responded beautifully to carbamazepine or gabapentin. So it could be that these patients are having this neurovascular cross compression, and which is leading to this instead of getting the paroxysmal attack, they are getting particularly this disorientation, vestibular disorientation syndrome while driving, and they were not having other history of typically vestibular paroxysmia, but this carbamazepine helped in this group of patients. So this is just a postulate, whether I'm also not sure, it is not described in literature. I'm not sure about this particular finding. So I'm trying to see whether like these patients also develop vestibular paroxysmia in future. So amitriptyline bisoprolol I tried, there was no improvement. Then I tried escitalopram, patient could not tolerate. Then the patient I started gabapentin, which also works in cross compression, and the patient had 70 to 80% improvement. So in this particular patient, the VNG findings were of left unilateral vestibulopathy, and the ICA loop was seen in MRI on the both the sides, and there was underlying history of migraine. So I'm not really sure which particular thing is underlying vestibular disorder is triggering this particular syndrome, that is functional vestibular disorder in this particular patient. Now coming to another patient where the patient was suffering from 2 years, and again similar history and history of migraine from 10 years. And again the smooth pursuit, there was little asymmetry, and this patient felt 80% better on amitriptyline, and there was recurrence after stopping the treatment, and there was the dizziness handicap inventory score reduced from 52 to 4 after starting amitriptyline. So this was 52 before starting the amitriptyline. After starting, it went down to 4. Now, in this particular patient, again, my diagnosis was MVDS with comorbid migraine. Now, this is another interesting case, like where he's a driver from 2005, and he developed this disorientation, fear, palpitation, and similar type of history, and 1 month history of headache similar to migraine. Again, he had this asymmetry on the optokinetic and smooth pursuit, and some residual findings were there in the VNG of signature of the underlying vestibular disorder. I started pregabalin, and the patient had a very good response, that is 75% improvement in his symptoms. But there is something unusual. One interesting thing which I saw in this patient, I just listened to what he said. गाड़ी चलाते वक्त आपको प्रॉब्लम होता है ना, वो क्या होता है बताएंगे?
स्ट्रेट जाने के टाइम राइट साइड में लगभग इश्यू होते हैं, तो सामने वाला राइट साइड राइट लाइन में जो गाड़ी है सामने वाला हिट करने के लिए
ऐसा लगता है कि आप हिट करेंगे उस गाड़ी जी राइट साइड वाले, और दोनों हाथ स्टीयरिंग पे रखे तो क्या होता है? दोनों
स्टीयरिंग में पकड़ के जाए तो कोई
प्रॉब्लम आता है। अगर स्टीयरिंग से हाथ हटाया तो
राइट साइड तो राइट हैंड छोड़ के सिर्फ लेफ्ट हैंड पकड़ के इतना प्रॉब्लम नहीं होता।
ओके, और हाई स्पीड पे होता है ये
80 के ऊपर 80 और 120
वो होता है,
ये हमेशा नहीं।
हाँ, कभी कभी होता है। और ये दवाई स्टार्ट करने के बाद इम्प्रूवमेंट है जी। ठीक। So those who couldn't follow the Hindi, I will tell. Basically, this patient was describing symptoms in high speed, and especially those vehicles. If there is a vehicle on the in the right lane, he feels that he might hit that particular vehicle on the right side of his vehicle. And other very important thing he told, which little confused, it confused me totally. Like when he keeps both the hands on the steering, then he feels that his vehicle will go towards the right side. But if he removes his right hand, then he feels okay, like he can drive comfortably. So this is the history which made me to think of something else which is happening in this particular patient. Apart from the motorist vestibular disorientation, which he has typical history of motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome. But one part of his history, which he told, if he keeps his right hand on the steering, then he feels the vehicle will go on the right side. And one more history he told, which is very interesting. I will show you. Yeah.
सिग्नेचर गलत होता है राइट हैंड से
This another history he told is he's finding difficulty to put signature with his right hand. Sometimes it is very difficult to put a signature with his right hand. He's making errors. So I saw this patient last month, and I will keep a follow up of this patient, because I have a feel that he might develop like a Parkinson, idiopathic Parkinson's disease in future, because there is tone asymmetry. Because of hypertonia on one side, he might be pulling the vehicle on the one side, and he's feeling himself that he might pull the vehicle towards the right, and that because of the tone imbalance. But he responded beautifully to pregabalin. And I will keep a follow-up of this patient, and see whether he develops any early signs of Parkinson's disease in future. But currently he doesn't have any cogwheeling or any tremors, but he's doing well on this pregabalin. Now coming to another patient who has typical history, but a very important thing which I noticed in this particular patient was like there were 4 findings in the MRI, which I thought of in another patient earlier, but this is the case where there were 4 findings, and I was really confused which of the MRI finding is causing, which triggering this particular motorist vestibular disorientation. One of the finding was this arachnoid cyst, the retrocerebellar arachnoid cyst was there. Okay, it is causing little effacement of the cerebellum, and it is there. But like one by one, I will mention the findings. Let us discuss which one of them is triggering this motorist vestibular disorientation. The second finding was, you can see the vertebral artery on the left side is compressing the medulla towards totally displacing the medulla, and anterolateral aspect of the medulla is compressed, and the medulla is displaced towards the right side and laterally. So this comes under the category of vertebral artery compression syndrome, in which the normal caliber vertebral artery also can cause compression of the medulla and can cause compression of the vessels which are there in the subarachnoid space, and it can cause symptoms of TIA, transient ischemic attacks. So this was another finding in this particular patient, the second finding. The first finding was arachnoid cyst, the second was vertebral artery compression syndrome, and the third finding was this particular empty sela with some perioptic CSF. It is not very well seen here, but in other images it was sagittal image, it was clearly seen, the optic nerve tortuosity. And but the patient didn't have severe headaches, and I didn't like many a times we see this finding in patients with headache, and we have to really follow these patients. If they are worsening or they develop papilledema, then we can do lumbar puncture and check the CSF pressure. But in this particular patient, he didn't have any papilledema. And the fourth finding which I saw in this patient was the loops on both the sides. The patient had loops, vascular loop on in both the sides, the ICA loop. So this patient had four different things like arachnoid cyst, then the vertebral artery compression syndrome, the some findings which were going in favor of IIH in idiopathic intracranial hypertension, and the neurovascular cross compression. So these were the four things, and I was literally confused which one of them is triggering. But there was no papilledema, and I didn't start any specific treatment for these conditions. And I discussed with the neurosurgeon, and he told that it may not be causing the symptoms. So I thought that like another patient which I discussed, I thought that this is a neurovascular compression which is leading to this motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome in this particular patient. And I started this patient on carbamazepine, and patient had a very good response to the not carbamazepine. The patient had a very good response to the gabapentin. Patient had a good response to gabapentin. So patient didn't respond to carbamazepine, didn't respond to pregabalin, but patient responded to the gabapentin. And these were the four findings which were seen in this particular patient, similar to vestibular paroxysmia, idiopathic intracranial hypertension, arachnoid cyst, and vertebral artery compression syndrome. So in a given patient, it is very important to correlate clinically, and MRI may show many asymptomatic disorder or pre-symptomatic disorders. But it is very important to correlate clinically and follow these patients to reach to a particular diagnosis. Now coming to next thing is in my registry, as I have mentioned, like I have seen these variety of cases which were the age group ranging from 32 to 64 years. Most of them were in their fifth decade. Majority of them were males, like 15 were males and one female patient. Many were drivers from long duration and they developed disorientation while driving, and the duration of history was ranging from up to 3 years, as short as 5 days to 3 years. And the mean time to diagnose, as I have already mentioned, the mean time to diagnose triple PD is 4.5 years. Similarly, the mean time to diagnose patients with motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome is also very long. And these patients usually develop anxiety, palpitations, syncope, sweating, and they commonly like get worked up for the cardiac causes, autonomic dysfunction, and syncopal attacks. And these patients might even many of my patients, they also shown to ophthalmologists, ENTs, neurologists, general physicians. And some of my patients also, they have took driving classes because they felt that there is some issue with their driving. So two of the patients have went for the driving classes, and they tried to see whether their driving improves after taking the classes. So as I have mentioned earlier, the triggers were higher speed, bends and turns, multi-lane slopes, overtaking, and looking at other vehicles at signal. And 12 out of 16 patients had history of migraine. Whether it is a coincidental or migraine is a known trigger for this condition, the time will tell us. 3 patients had motion sickness in the past. 4 had episodic blockage of ears and fullness, which is a very common finding which I see in patients with vestibular migraine. 3 patients had diurnal variations, which are seen commonly in patients with triple PD. And these are the drugs which I have used. If it is a pure triple PD without any comorbidity, many a times amitriptyline helps. If there is comorbid migraine, bisoprolol, magnesium helps. Venlafaxine is a good drug. If the patient doesn't respond to amitriptyline, we can go ahead with venlafaxine or disvenlafaxine. Gabapentin and pregabalin, these are the drugs when there is associated vascular loop. If the patient has associated vascular loop, neurovascular cross compression, then patients respond to this gabapentin, pregabalin, carbamazepine. So in my registry, pure triple MVDS, like motorist vestibular disorientation, 12 patients had pure MVDS. 12 patients had associated history of migraine. 2 patients were having associated neurovascular cost compression. 1 patient was having old vestibular neuritis, superior vestibular neuritis, and he could be like something similar to patients with triple PD have some underlying structural vestibular disorder in the past, and they can develop this triple functional symptoms. And one of the patient, as I already mentioned, I have to keep observing whether the patient develops Parkinson's disease in future, apart from this MVDS the patient is suffering from. And one patient I didn't mention here because patient presented to me like while driving, the patient develops sudden drowsiness, and patient suddenly gets becomes blank for a few seconds. And that patient, I didn't think of MVDS because the patient is elderly and he came with history of drowsiness and altered sensorium while driving. Then in that particular patient, I did his brain scan and EEG. I started him on antiepileptic drugs like levetiracetam. I started, and he from last 2 months I'm following him, and he didn't develop any of those episodes which he used to. He's a truck driver and he was developing those symptoms. So he is not a case of motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome. He's a case of epilepsy, a different type of epilepsy, and he is better now on the anti-epileptic drug. So it is not that MVDS is the only disorder which can manifest while driving or related any neurological symptoms or dizziness. There are variety of disorders which can present while driving, as I have already mentioned in my initial slides. There are variety of disorders which can manifest while driving, but this MVDS should be considered, especially in the patients where we can't find any other cause. And it is not a diagnosis of exclusion. We can find the comorbid disorder also, and it can be present along with the other comorbid disorder. So I thank everyone for patient listening. It was I hope like everyone got this particular some take home message from the cases which I have presented. And actually, I was not well prepared for this particular presentation. I started preparing for this presentation from morning. Some of the VNG findings and VNG graphs I wanted to include, and some of the follow-ups are missing. So maybe in the subsequent presentation, I will give the follow-up of some of these cases. And I thank everyone for patient listening. And over to you, Dr. Sriharsha, for moderation of questions, if there are any.
Thank you, sir. Excellent selection of cases and very interesting, actually. So we'll take questions from the audience. Any questions? If you want, you can unmute and interact.
Hello. Good evening, Dr. Vishal Pawar. As usual, excellent presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I thought I will tell my motorist this disorder, what happened. I will just narrate only 2 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. While driving in Bangalore, so busy, congested road, both the sides vehicles were there, big vehicles. One side bus, one side a big lorry, and in front of me was a big SUV. And we're in the traffic jam, we were stuck. That means we had stopped the vehicles. Then the signal became green, and vehicle started moving, which I had not noticed. Suddenly, I felt that my vehicle was going backward, and behind me was a BMW, and I thought I will hit the BMW because my vehicle is automatically it is going backwards. I thought, by mistake, did I put the reverse gear and started moving? That was a thought. All this happened within fraction of a second, and I was stepping on the brake. I was literally standing on the brake, and the vehicle was not stopping at all. That was my feeling. I thought I have already hit the BMW. Somehow, when I almost literally stood up on the brake, I saw the ground. Ground was stationary. Then I concluded, oh, my vehicle is not moving. This was only a disorientation. This is what happened. So this happened only once. Afterwards, I started concentrating on the stationary objects whenever such a thing happened. So this happened about 3-4 years back. Afterwards, nothing has happened. So just for your information.
Yeah, sir. This is a physiological illusion. Basically, what happens is when there is difference of optic flow, this is a common illusion. Even this particular phenomenon can happen when you are parking your vehicle. When you are in parking, and suppose one-sided vehicle, suppose the vehicle which is parked on the right side starts moving, and you are stationary. Suppose you have parked your vehicle, and the vehicle on the right side, suppose, starts moving forward. Then what happens is the peripheral vision of in our peripheral vision, even if our foveal vision is focused, suppose, in front, in the peripheral vision, the whatever visual information, the optic flow is coming from the right side is not matching with the optic flow which is coming from the left side. Like, for example, left side is stationary, and the right side is giving information that the vehicle is moving forwards. So that creates the illusion in the brain that your vehicle is moving backwards. And that same thing happened like what you have described, and suddenly we our like foot goes to for the brake, for braking, because it is an illusion where you feel like your vehicle is going backwards. But if suppose you shift your vision to the left side and you see that your vehicle is static because of the visual cues, once the visual cues of static information you receive, then you will notice that your vehicle is static. So it's very common illusion which is seen, especially in the parking or at the. This doesn't qualify as motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We have two questions from chat section, sir. Does a VR box help in rehabilitation of this patient? Do you give any rehabilitation other than amitriptyline?
Yeah, very good question actually, because actually I tell these patients to play video games like car racing games. But honestly, currently we don't have any VVRT therapy. Like virtual vestibular rehabilitation is the best form of therapy for these patients, in which we can give simulation. For two of my patients, I sent them at one place where this VVRT is available, and they really benefited out of it. Like they in that VVRT, there are modules for this motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, where the car moves in high speed, as well as there are multi-lane highways, and the vehicles are crossing by, and these similar situations are created. So if the person gets frequently habituated that kind of environment, then definitely VVRT has a role. But actual physiotherapy, if they have associated triple PD, if these patients have underlying vestibulopathy or underlying vestibular migraine or underlying triple PD, definitely yes, these patients will benefit by physiotherapy, like vestibular rehabilitation therapy, by giving like balance training, dynamic and static and habituation exercises, and visual exercises, like exercises for the vestibulo-ocular reflex. But if they have pure MVDS, pure motorist vestibular disorientation syndrome, definitely the car racing games and the VVRT module, which has this particular module, can help them.
Next question, Dr. Joy. Can you explain agoraphobia and how do you perform a hyperventilation test?
Yeah, see, agoraphobia is a symptom in which patients develop feel dizzy or uncomfortable in crowded places or open places. And what happens in this particular situation, I'll tell you. For example, in crowded places, if people are moving around, again that creates asymmetry in the visual information. So in patients who are suffering from functional vestibular disorder, that is triple PD, there is a shift, sensory shift from vestibular there are three systems which are required for balance. That is vestibular system, proprioception, and the visual information. So because the patients suffer from some underlying vestibular disorder, there is increased reliance initial phase of recovery. They rely more on the proprioceptive cues and the visual cues. But once the vestibular system comes back to normal, even if it recovers 100%, the person still relies on the visual cues, doesn't give importance to the vestibular system, because there is change in the functional connections, and there is a visual shift and somatosensory shift. So what happens, these patients rely more on the visual cues, and when the visual cues are disturbed, then they get confused, they get disoriented. So for example, suppose they are open places. I have few employees of who are working at airport. They get because they are more relying on the visual cues, and visual cues are not fixed. When in open place, the visual cues are not fixed. They are not giving proper information for their balance. In a closed space, you have proper visual cues and you can maintain balance, but in open places they get confused. And in crowded places where people are moving around in different directions, then again that creates a difference in the optic flow, asymmetry of the optic flow, as I have described earlier, and that can lead to create confusion. So these are the two things where agoraphobia manifests, like open places and crowded places, and these patients feel very much uncomfortable in supermarkets, malls, and airports. So that was about the agoraphobia, which is very common symptom which is seen in patients with triple PD. Agoraphobia earlier was considered as an under psychiatric disorders, but later on it is categorized as a functional disorder, and it is a very much important symptom of triple PD, functional vestibular disorder. Now coming to the another question, part of the question, that is regarding the hyperventilation test. In hyperventilation test, what we need to do is we have to ask the person to open the mouth and perform mouth breathing, fast mouth breathing, and in deep inhalation, exhalation over 1 second, and they perform it for up to 60 seconds, like 30 to 60 seconds as tolerated by the patient. And after this, in corona situation, we what I used to do earlier was I used to keep the mask on. But if we keep the mask on, the hyperventilation will not wash out the CO2 and create the chemical milieu which is favorable for to check the hyperventilation test. Basically what we are doing by hyperventilation test is we are washing out CO2, we are creating a situation of respiratory alkalosis, where the calcium moves intracellularly, and there is hypocalcemia, and the nerves become hyperexcitable. Like what happens in hypocalcemia is the nerves which are demyelinated, which are not conducting in normal environment, they become hyperexcitable, or they become conductible when we create a situation of respiratory alkalosis. So in hyperventilation test, if we do it for a minute, the patients can develop nystagmus. Patients who have especially vestibular paroxysmia, vestibular neuronitis, then CP angle tumors. So these are the situations where the patients can, vestibular migraine is another cause of common, where we can get hyperventilation induced nystagmus. So, but suppose in patients with functional disorder, what happens is they develop dizziness after hyperventilation without any nystagmus. That is a very common finding which I see in patients with functional vestibular disorders, patients with vestibular migraine who have triple PD component. So these are the things, this can happen in patients with, like in patients with hyperventilation, this thing, protocol.
Next question. In motion sickness, why are patients more symptomatic if they are sitting behind?
Yeah. So basically, again, it is a question about visual cues. Like when a person is suffering from motion sickness, the movement of the vehicle, the movement inside the vehicle is more when you are sitting behind as compared to you are sitting in front. So you are getting continuous somatosensory information when you are sitting behind, you are moving and you are getting somatosensory information. And what happens there, because any excess information, why motion sickness happens is this vestibular information or visual information and the somatosensory information in excess. In excess, no, even normal information which is going to the brain stimulates the variety of pathways and it causes nausea, dizziness. So that's why when they are sitting behind, the symptoms are more triggered as compared to the sitting in front.
Yes, sir. So I hope that answers the question. That's all from the chat section, sir. If any of the audience would like to ask any questions, you can ask, or else we can close for the day.
And one last thing, Dr. Shriyas, I would like to thank Dr. Preeti. She is also here. Out of the case series, 16 cases, 3 of cases are from Kochi Medical Trust. And I'm really thankful to her for contributing her cases. And Dr. Preeti, if you have any inputs, if you want to add anything, any information, feel free.
No, I think it was a very excellent talk, Dr. Vishal. You have actually covered all the valiant points. I was just asking about the VR box because most of the time the patients are not happy with just a drug alone. I think it's available on Amazon. So it costs something less than 400 or 500. And they can use that VR box for, and you can download the YouTube videos also, simulation videos.
Yes, yes.
So I don't know
Yeah.
the feedback from these patients, but I suppose it can work without any much of cost issues.
Yes, yes. The VR goggles are these VR boxes are available and they're not very costly. So we can that's a good idea actually. We can ask the patient to buy and see the videos which are like motion related videos, driving videos. Yeah.
I think Dr. Pratik has just mentioned that it is available from Cyclops also. I didn't know that.
Okay, okay. Dr. Pratik, if you have any inputs,
Hello.
you can feel free.
Hello, sir. I'm Dr. Puranik from Mangalore. Very nice presentation. Hello.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
I have one patient. I don't know whether the enough information is there. He is a 47-year-old man. As you were telling, he feels while driving, his car is moving to right, especially when he was in highways, he says. And he was investigated in first neuro. And what they said is, I don't know whether you can see the this Vivo art. That was only one showed this changes. I try to focus. Can you see this, sir?
Yeah. So what was the finding on the VR?
Even no, I am not familiar with this. They said that there is only Vivo abnormality, no other. They gave neurologist gave some medicine, but he is not well with that. What he says is, as you said, in a village and a single lane and all, he has no problem. But when driving in highways, he really veers to the right because the other vehicles keep honking, and so he is very can't take his family, he says. This is there for last 2 years. No, all other investigations are normal.
Yeah, this is
do you-
common history, sir. Yeah, yeah. Tell me, sir. Tell.
Do you suggest anything for him?
See, detailed VNG is essential to rule out any history of any migraine or history of any.
There is no history of migraine, no headache, nothing, sir.
Okay. So he can be started on amitriptyline to begin with, and
Yeah.
if there is no response, it's better to do imaging to see for any vascular cross compression.
Right,
And
sir.
if there is no response to amitriptyline, there are 2-3 things can be done. Either
Yes.
to add bisoprolol, magnesium, or if there is cross compression, go for carbamazepine or gabapentin. That's what this approach I'm following here. But I'm not sure. It is not mentioned in the literature, but just with these many cases we have found that it helps.
Carbamazepine, how much dose can be given?
You can start with low dose, that is 200 milligrams once
Right.
daily. And if there is
Yes,
a
sir.
good response, it can be continued in the same dose. And very important thing to tell to the patient that they can develop rash, and if they notice any rash itching immediately, it should be stopped. Sometimes they continue and it can develop into Steven Johnson. So that
How
is the
long
only
this can be given?
Sir, it can be usually what happens is there is a spectrum of these patients. Like some patients require for short term. It is something similar to migraine, like you give for some few months, and patients, once they stop following you, that means they are either they are better. And some of my patients are regularly following. There are some of, like, out of these 16, there are 4 or 5 patients are regularly coming for medication, and others I have lost to follow up. Maybe they are better. So I'm going to keep a follow up of all those patients, like other patients also, and I'm going to see how many respond and how much duration of therapy is required for this patient. But it varies with patient to patient. Some patients have mild, it depends on the underlying disorder which is triggering this condition.
Yeah, no, if we are giving gabapentin, how much can you get?
Here I give 300 milligrams once daily, and most of the cases it works very well in 300 milligrams once daily.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Pratik, you have any inputs? You can share your inputs.
Can I inform now? Can they?
Dr. Pratik? I think there is some issue with his audio.
Looks like so.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we can conclude for the day, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, sir. We had very interesting discussion of wide variety of cases, and we have done 11 sessions. I'm really happy that you have put in a lot of effort and time, and hope we'll be meeting again on the month of September, where we that will be marked as a 1 year of what I got talks. Thank you once again, sir, and we'll see you again.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Okay.